This is the talk of Music City Real Estate.
Welcome back to another episode of the Talk of Music City Real Estate,
where we educate and motivate all things real estate.
My name is Monte Mohr with Realty One Group Music City.
Hey, and I'm CareyAnn with CMG Financial and my mortgage team.
Every week we'll be posting a new episode chock full of Nashville real estate value.
Yes, and you could follow along and subscribe at talkmusiccity.com.
Got a question for us? Ask away at questions@talkmusiccity.com. CareyAnn, that was the last event we got together here with these two. It was a lot of fun, and I think today's this time is going to be even more fun. It sounds like
it is, Monty. I'm so glad that you just jumped right in there. Normally he says it twice, so I was ready for my beat, and you just jumped right in. So I think you're ready. You're like, let's dive in. We've got a good topic.
First of all, let's make sure everybody knows who we're sitting here with.
Yes.
Since it's usually not four of us here.
No, that's true. The one and only Mr. Daniel Collins.
Yay.
Welcome
Daniel,
back.
Owner and CEO of this. Well, I'm sorry. What do you call yourself again?
I am the peaceful leader. We'll call myself this time.
There
Peaceful
you go.
leader.
I love it.
All right.
Many titles, and the very talented Miss Mimi Lundy. Welcome.
Thank
Who's
you guys for joining us.
The new compliment to broker support, or broker support as a compliment to the broker.
I want to be the compliment to the broker support. I think she's way better than I am.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys are going to compliment each other very well. It's going to be great.
So today we've been challenged, everybody, to talk about some of the interesting experiences in real estate. Do you mind if I lead?
Lead away. You're a born leader.
You're a leader. Yes.
No, but the truth in today's world, when you're 73 almost, and don't get me wrong, I'm sharp as a tack, okay? Just ask my wife, I'm sharp as a tack. When you think of something, you got to get it out or you forget about it.
That's true.
You know? Anyways, so it's a beautiful thing, the fact that here in Nashville area, we live in what we consider the Bible Belt. Are you aware of that, Dan?
Absolutely, yeah.
Mimi, this is considered the Bible Belt of the buckle of the Bible Belt, okay? And it's a beautiful thing. I love working with Christian folks. I really, really do. They blame God for a lot of stuff that it's probably has nothing to do with. But my point of the story is, it's not uncommon in my experience for somebody to say, well, that with this problem and this problem, God doesn't want me to buy the house. And which I turn around and I tell them then my first sale in real estate. Okay, now this was almost 42 years ago in a couple months. My first sale in real estate was, first of all, had gone 6 months without a sale. It was a really scary time. I'd gotten my license, moved to Florida from Illinois as a laid-off factory worker. Somebody said, I bet you can make $30,000 a year. And I said, $30,000 a year, that's twice what I'm making now. So I moved my family down to Florida to sell real estate. Now what? For 6 months later, I had finally gotten my first property. It was a tough one. I'd learned how to minimize the cash out of pocket CareyAnn with FHA and so forth, and right before the closing, the appraisal comes back. The house needs a new roof. The sellers don't have the money to put a roof on the house. So my buyer, who happens to be a roofer, says, well, I'll put a roof on a house. And so he put a roof on a house that he doesn't own. But the lender promised everything was good. So we went ahead and moved forward with that experience. Well, anyhow, fast forward here to the closing date. Where back then, we all gathered around one table, buyer on one side, seller on the other, agents kind of in the middle, refereeing in case that was needed. And so the seller and their agent is there, I'm there, but my buyers who'd put a roof on a home, who showed all kinds of earnestness to buy this home, were not there. An hour later, and we're all sitting there waiting because there was that's the way they did it back then. Nobody closed until everybody closed at one time. And pretty soon, the other broker comes up to me and he says, Monty, are we going to close this or what? I said, this is my first deal, okay? This is my first transaction. And so he says, see that county cop out there and parked in front of the building? I said, yeah, I see him, looking through the window. And he said, well, we were supposed to close last week, as you remember, and I wrote some checks I probably shouldn't have written, and now he's here to get my commission check, or he's going to take me to jail for writing, checks that weren't any good. And so I get a phone call from my buyer, and my buyer's crying, and I'm thinking, oh no. and this story could go a lot longer. I'll just, get to the high points here. And I'm thinking, okay, why is this person crying? The Mrs. Buyer. And it turns out that when they were in process of moving their stuff out of the apartment, he had left his certified check on the dash, and some kids had taken it. And so anyhow, the point of the story is, when people say, well, God must not want me to buy this house, I remind them, well, God certainly doesn't want me to be in real estate then, because that was my first transaction. Now, this guy who was telling me that the cops were out waiting for him was a broker. He was the broker of his office, and I'm just a lowly agent who had just, my first sale, I was so excited about it. 6 months into it, I'm going to bring some. Anyway, that was my first story in real estate, and that's what I remind people when they say God must not want me to buy the house, because I say God wants you to have the fulfillment of your desires in your heart as long as you're keeping Him first. So if you want to buy this house, don't blame Him, okay? If you don't want to, don't blame Him. Daniel.
Listen, these are all experiences that make you who you are today,
That's
though.
right.
So
true.
Now you get to share that story, but there's a lesson there, and don't count your chickens before they're hatched, right?
Well, you never do.
So
that's
true.
for sure.
Yeah, you had to learn that early.
Not till it's already cashed in the bank. Don't even cash it. Don't even count it on the way to the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we never know. I mean, when it comes to financing, you just never know, right, what happens. I remember the story that many people experienced over all the years when I had my first big sale. I bought a house a little too prematurely, and I had too many houses, so I really had to sell it. And I was really excited. I had this person that was going to purchase the first $1 million home. Okay, this was, keep in mind, I should have listened to all of the folks that said hold real estate. That's another lesson you should take away. Do not sell your real estate, because 6 months later, COVID happened, and every real estate transaction I ever had, jumped up in price. But this was the first. That house sold 6 months later for $2 million that I did not appreciate or get part of it. But first house, and no joke, 2 days before closing, I was the seller, moved all the furniture out, right? Trying to balance all of it. And God also told them not to purchase that home. But then
there goes God again.
But miraculously, this was interesting. Miraculously, I received a denial letter. Okay. I'm the seller. Now the seller is a lender. Okay. And you know that I cross my T's and dot my I's. I'm not going to take on a buyer transaction unless I look at the contract and I see the LTV and I see the pre-approval, and I know every lender in town, so I knock to make sure that pre-approval was legit, and I know when I need the appraisal ordered and da-da-da-da-da. So I knew this person could qualify. And he probably crossed the line from a Privacy Act and shared a little too much information that he said that this borrower could pay cash for this transaction. But again, God said that this was not the house for them. And again, do you for you, so that's fine, except for the fact that he wanted his $10,000 earnest money back. And here comes the denial letter. And I'm like, this is not right. I need to stand up for every seller there is, right? And so I was like, I'm not giving back the earnest money. And these people sued me for it, and they wanted the $10,000, and that went on for 5 years. And somebody's made us some money if they're willing to continue to sue you for $10,000, right? So at the end of it all, I forgot it was even happening. I get this message that says, CareyAnn, I just want to let you know the resolution. I'm like, resolution of what? That lawsuit you were in so many years ago over this earnest money on the house at, such and such. And the court found that they were in the wrong, right, at the end of the day. But the bill is $12,000 for the attorney fees, and it wasn't about the money for me. It was about just the purpose of and you just don't do that to others, right? I was holding my ground to be able to share a really good story on social media, type of thing. And the attorney that I was working with also saw, because they were in real estate attorney, that there was a bigger point here that we were trying to make, and they waived the extra fees. I said, just keep the earnest money. It wasn't about me keeping the earnest money, but it was great to hear that buyer could not just come back at the last second and not like the terms that they received. And that's the reason why the other lender denied them on getting an equity line and the Fed rate change or something like that. But they were qualified. And the judge basically said that, they were truly qualified, right? And we were just giggling the other day about another client called me, and many that know I'm the lone whisperer in town. So you call me for a purpose, you call me to get you approved. And so I give you an approval, and then they call back the next day because they didn't like, the terms and some of the terminology of the particular condo and ask for a denial letter when I know point blank that they're approved. So that's something else that we get to witness, right? As brokers, you're seeing, how do I get my buyer out of this transaction? What is the right thing and the wrong thing, wrong way to do it? I definitely, follow the contract, but don't falsify, your financing, because a really good lender should not be granting you. And I think that's why I won, because they quickly got approved 2 weeks later and bought another house, just not my house, on that transaction. But we see this more and more, on it.
That speaks volumes to who you are as a lender. And if I was representing a seller and a buyer's agent brought me an offer, and you had done the pre-qual for that buyer, well, I would feel extra confident in knowing they are qualified, because I would know how you stand ethically as far as not giving a denial letter to someone that does qualify, just to try to maintain that relationship with the realtor, with the buyer, or what have you. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, and I mean, you have to hold your ground, right? It's easy to, cave sometimes, right? Because you want to help out somebody, but an earnest money check is not worth your license and doing something that is not the right thing.
You'll find out here that there'll be in a multiple offers. I've had this happen multiple times with us, that we're in a multiple offer situation, and our offer is chosen because of our lender. I won't mention any names, but she's blonde and but
You're so kind.
It does make a difference, the confidence of the lender, because of that reputation.
Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
She shows who she is.
Yeah, exactly.
But Dan, you probably have some stories you could share.
Oh, I can, but what I was thinking is the flip side of this is you guys are the host, typically. Let's put it back on you with all your wisdom and experiences. You come up with the craziest experiences in your life, and what's the dark side of real estate that you guys get to deal with? You hear from us as guests and our journey and our stories, and but that's usually what we hear is the success stories, but we don't see all the failures. And you always talk about some of those, but just the calls that we get, the fires that we get to put out, only make us stronger. I believe that how do we be proactive? And one of my biggest missions is, I share that with all of you and our team, with Jeff and everyone, is how do we create more competency in real estate? Where the average consumer with the lawsuits out there don't maybe really respect real estate agents, don't really know what we do, don't really know the hours and the problems that we deal with. Some of them are kind of comical. Just so, hey, in the last week, you get calls. What is the wildest one that you or Mimi have experienced that just you're like, really? That happened? Because it's not all about just pre-qual to close, right? There's 1,000 people and inspections that go in between. And, I think I heard you say it, the 2 hours before closing, a deal says no, and people are in the moving truck. Like nobody wants to experience that. So how do we avoid it? But what was the story? It's just kind of a, I think don't let it happen.
We quickly forget that lenders, right, and also real estate agents, everybody, we're only as good as the information provided by the buyer, right? And so if they share a story, why would I not believe that story to be true? Then to find out that it is all being made up right in front of you, like it's baking a cake, like they're just baking this whole story up, and then you're stuck, in a situation that you can't unravel, and the only choice you can do is say, no, and it's devastating. It is very hard. So, I mean, we've seen a lot of things. I mean, I've seen clients decide that they don't like their boss, and they just walk out, and they're closing Monday. Like, what are we doing? We've seen that. And who in their right mind would, think of that? You've got other people that are buying multi-million-dollar houses. You and I would assume, right? They're driving a nice car. Everything should be organized financially, and they're counting every penny right at the end of the day, and trying to transfer money around and, getting the checks and different things. I mean, we see it all, that happens. So I always welcome this industry, and I'm not surprised anymore. I just, I giggle too. My owner, I asked him for an exception. This was kind of funny because he's a little older. Maybe not as old as you, but He's older. Love you, mean it. So he's looking at the bank statements, right? And there's a younger gent, and he's moving up in the world. And how the younger generations earns their money. We just appreciate that they're making money, right? I don't know, but he's like, I don't understand this OnlyFans. What is this OnlyFans, right? And so this is my owner. I'm trying to sell him on the idea that he has enough money, and he looks so good that he makes enough on the OnlyFans account. It was really kind of funny. So he's a model on OnlyFans, but my boss now knows all things about OnlyFans. So that was a kind of funniest story too. But
what about the realtors on OnlyFans? I think we've experienced a little bit of that too. Yeah. I mean, it's happened. A whole nother.
Oh my dear Lord, I wouldn't be. I don't know.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
We won't go there. That's clickbait. But it's a real thing. People think realtors are made of money, but it takes a long time to be successful. In the meantime, they'll do whatever they can to fill their pockets, whether it's serving tables or nowadays, unfortunately, that, and it's
selling feet pics. I don't know.
Really?
It's sad.
Oh my!
Maybe I missed out on my calling.
It's just such a hard industry. Everyone thinks that it's so easy.
I know it.
So a lot of people get into it thinking it's just going to be, sign on the dotted line and the checks are just going to come, and it's not. When they realize it's not, then it's like, well, what's Plan B? And in today's world, there are a lot of options for Plan B, and it's like, no, just drill it back in. Let's focus on Plan A.
Well, I think it goes back to even just selling real estate, right? The TV shows make everything look so pretty, right? Everything's beautiful. I can get that for that, and so I want, this beautiful home. So I think they also make real estate look so glamorous, right? That we're supposed to possibly wear that, drive that, live there, all the things. So, I am grateful for a mom a long time ago taught me how to, save my money, because you just never know in this industry. There's many people that just kind of live on their scenario, right? Their closing that's happening here. And different things cause that closing possibly, not to occur. The other thing we talked about too is knowing what you're actually selling, right? If you're a listing agent, taking the time to know what you're selling. I always say we love all homes, we love all people, all homes, and all credit profiles here at CareyAnn and my mortgage team, because Middle Tennessee, which maybe you're experiencing this in Arizona, but there's all kinds of different houses here. We've got tiny homes, we got container homes, we got manufactured homes, berm homes, we got log homes, but is it a real log home, or can you flick the logs off it, which is only glued on, right? You got all kinds of different, houses. You've got PUDs and condos and different things. So we experience more and more transactions that are falling apart right at the last second, because you and I possibly think it's this, but it turns out to be that, and the financing associated is only, one direction or another. But that's something too that I see a lot that crosses my path.
Mimi, what crazy story comes to mind for you?
What crazy story?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, there's just so many.
I know, that's my mind's a blur right now. They're just trying to narrow down.
We need to take notes and write books, and it's just it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
When I think back to when I first got licensed, I was so proud to be a realtor. I was so proud to get that real estate license. I was on a career path, and it's going to be wonderful, because I'm still, my mind is still going to people, they just get licensed, like this is going to make all the big money and stuff. I was so proud, and I was so disheartened a year into it when I realized what a lot of consumers think we do, and they just truly don't know what the agent goes through from the beginning to end. And it's so, when you were saying they were baking the cake, they were mixing the cake right in front of you. Realtors, we have to deal with that every day, day in and day out. You never really know what's the real story. And as a broker, whenever they call, I'm like, well, who do we represent, the buyer or the seller? Because we're going to take it two different directions depending on who we represent, right? What's your story? What's their story? What's the real story? What do we got to do to get the cake ready to put in the oven,
legally and truthfully.
Legally and truthfully. And every time that phone rings, it's something different. I never know which direction we're going to go in.
Well, the other thing we deal with, and I'm seeing it more and more, sadly, which I think is important for agents to know, is we're starting to see more mortgage fraud across our desks. And I just grew up with, if you tell me something, it's truthful, like we said, right? I mean, why would I assume? I assume you took the time to send me pay stubs that were not, and or a military pay stub for that matter, right?
Everything with so much deed fraud. We request two forms of ID, one picture ID, and then a piece of mail. And as crazy as it sounds, that we've caught so much deed fraud asking for the piece of mail for the the potential seller, who's really not the seller, they're really not the owner of the land. It's someone pretending to be the owner of the land. And they can produce a fake ID like that. I mean, $50, I got a fake ID, but try to produce a piece of mail. We caught one time that turned in a utility bill, and we knew it was false and it was fraud because the utility company that they put on the bill wasn't even the utility company,
for
the
that
power company for that area. And that's how we caught them. It's crazy.
We'll see on the pay stubs round numbers on the taxes, or we'll see like Spring Hill was spelt wrong, right? Like but if you don't take the time to actually look at it, right? It could be a situation. We had a deal where, we have an employment contract program. So if you give me your employment contract, I can get you into a house before you even start work, right? Well, it has to be clearly legit. So we call and we verify, and the number we call, we get verified that it's that they're starting and all this. So it is Joe behind a computer at his house calling and verifying.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there takes a lot now to. It's sad, right, that we have to cross-check all of that. And what's even sadder is when you have to call the seller's agent and say, because technically we're not supposed to say it's fraud. I'm just a straightforward person. Like,
we just say
it's just what it is.
Fraud.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad.
Not the seller.
Yeah. Or I was at a CE class the other day, and this older couple, I guess, was purchasing a house, and the title company was just wanting to make everything work favorably, right? It's as smooth as possible. So they came up with some storyline that they couldn't wire the money, so they got a cashier's check for close to $1 million. And they moved forward, and everybody needed their money, right? So they gave out all the money, and that cashier's check was fraud.
Sure.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
And so
crazy.
that title company was out close to $1 million, to be able to fund everything and how to work
Holy
that
cow.
out. I mean, I would never even imagine that kind of story, happen. So, taking the time to do your due diligence, when we talk about the pre-approval letters and things, I mean, people kind of skate around it. Yeah. Should I really call? Yes, you should call, and you should ask lots of questions. Make sure that that loan officer just didn't, because somebody was, please send, I need it now, just didn't send it and hope that, they would fix it later and or realize that letter means nothing anyways. So, but I hate that. I have to be a woman of my word. If there's a letter out there with my name on it, we have to honor that. It drives me bonkers. I can't sleep at night, but there's some people that can definitely take a sleeping pill and get through the night with some of the stuff that they do. But some crazy things that happen all the time, And I know even sometimes it's not even what they do in real estate. It's what they do in their own personal lives and other things. I know there's lots of experiences that we all have crossed our paths.
I had one a few years ago where the young couple, as soon as they got out, I was showing them a $1 million listing at the time. And when they got out of the car, he led with, cause it was a young couple getting out of a pretty nice car. And he goes, I hope you don't treat us like the last realtor who thought we were too young to be able to buy a home like this. So I was kind of I didn't read through it at the time, but now I understand why he said that. We went in the house and they ended up negotiating for this house. And at a time in my life, I was really needing that money, and I was counting the dollars. It was my listing. It was going to be, $50,000 or 60, whatever it was. And at that time, it would help my life. And so that's what I was focused on, unfortunately. And I hate to even admit that, but the point is that we negotiated everything in the house, including down to the lady's clothing, which really kind of pissed her off because she goes, I don't want to give up my clothes. And the husband saying, hey, you can get more clothes. They happen to be the same size. So they negotiated down to she loved everything in her closet. So okay. So anyhow, we went through the inspection period, and the guy didn't show up. And so I'm looking for the $20,000 earnest money at the time. That's what they were going to put down to start with. And I couldn't get them to follow through with that. And then he mentioned another deal that they had with the title company. I finally got the title company to admit that these guys were scammers, and they wouldn't admit it because of confidentiality to start with. But they were living in, their whole deal was why they wanted to be able to move into the home prior to closing, because these folks had already found another home they were going to move into, and they were going to make it really easy so they didn't have to move the furniture or anything. They're negotiating everything. Sure. And the title, I finally got out of the title company what their scam was to move into the house while currently they were living, at that time they were living in a home in the basement with some other folks, and the other folks couldn't get them out of the house. They were that good at scamming. But anyhow, Yeah, I could tell some stories. If I should write a book sometimes about the crazy things that I have gone through. In all sincerity,
so I think we quickly forget them because they're so crazy.
Well,
it's like you got to keep moving forward.
Well, if we added up all the stories, I think in our current positions in our careers, like,
right?
How do we help avoid those problems?
For sure.
So what advice would you give, whether you're a more or less buyer seller, or maybe just an average real estate agent, to not have to try to avoid those problems? How do we develop more competency around what we do as real estate agents, helping agents do that? What advice would you have agents to become a better real estate agent, to serve their client better? What would you suggest they start doing more frequently to become better, not just practice on the field, so to speak?
Well, I work from the right space. I mean, I've been harping on this for years that, there's a reason why the real estate, unfortunately, community has the reputation they do, because they're independent contractors that are not guaranteed a salary, and sometimes their personal pressures yell louder than their willingness to do the next right thing, unfortunately. So, I mean, my conviction is, and Daniel, you're so good about creating these opportunities for people to learn. I sort of call them kids, for these new agents to learn. But you've got to immerse yourself in that learning. You've got to take advantage of every opportunity that you can to learn. And what happens is I see over and over again is that nothing's important until it's important to me as an agent. And that's heartbreaking to me sometimes, because my conviction is that prosperity follows value, and you control that value. We each around this table control our value based on our willingness to immerse ourselves in experience and learning in education and so forth. And but start with the core of working from the right place, that you're more interested in helping that client and doing such a great job in doing it, they will never hesitate referring you to their family and friends. I think that's what is needed to raise the bar in the industry, is work from a place of contribution and love. You're going to do the next right thing because your reputation depends on that. And we're providing constantly people, opportunities for people to do exactly that, become great at their trade.
I think too, reminding so many that the contract is actually a legal document, right? I feel like it's no big deal. I get that sent to me often from buyers, like, yeah, because I need documents by this time to be able to close you by the contract date. It's my job to close you on time. It shouldn't be that we're gonna wing it and miss it, type of thing. And I think that's important. The other thing, and we talk a lot about it, but I sometimes think that agents and lenders, just like you said, wing it a little bit. This is a business, right? Like, and you worked really hard to get to where you are. It is okay to ask more questions, right? To make sure that the people that you're surrounding yourself with just didn't buy you, brought you cookies or took you to lunch or dinner. Like, they actually, have a history of doing something the right way consistently, right? And just ask more questions, right? Just be always thinking 2 steps, because we're proof. We can continue the stories that, they will come up. And sadly, sometimes it's out of our control, and we have to also understand that. Like another scenario that I got yelled at as being the leader, which again, we get yelled at often too. Sometimes,
a lot.
So the skin gets thin, but we smile and hope the Yankee doesn't come out.
We hold the phone out here.
Yeah, I hope. I've learned to be very calm. I need to learn. My sister's just like you, very calm. I could have been her 2 tours, 3 tours in Iraq. She's very calm. I took her to New York so I could survive New York City, because I didn't think I could personally survive in New York. She was so calm there. I was like, look at her go. However, the buyer's cash was coming from a 401k. Okay. And you and I would assume that everything was finalized. Keep in mind, this wasn't my transaction, it was what loan officer in the office. And the company that he works for, the process to get the funds had to be snail mailed, right? And he was slow with requesting it. And so the process took longer. And so this extended, the contract. And everybody, she had the client move out, and the seller move out. It was a big deal. And everybody's yelling for the money, and there's no money. It is in the mail somewhere in the United States Postal Service, trying to get somewhere. So, the other thing I would say, and you probably all have experienced, is we just have to stay calm. There's some things that we can fix, and raising our voice and pounding our chest and stomping our feet possibly could fix that. I don't know if that makes you look any better or I look any better by doing that, right? But But sometimes the things are out of our control, and how can we all work together to create the result, right? That is still the outcome that each party wants. So what I shared is we have a couple options here. We can have your seller decide to, not move forward with this contract, right? Find another buyer for this home, work with this buyer. I mean, we only have two options here, right? And luckily they were able to work, but there was a lot of passion coming in all different forms from the other side to me,
And sometimes we just have to find a little patience, because many things will work themselves out. Sometimes if you just give it an hour, and maybe it'll take a day, but a little patience.
Yeah, and I think if people are serious and we realize that they're serious about the want to purchase and or the want to sell, we can work this out. I see many transactions that fall apart over $500 or $1,000, and I get so confused because I know what it takes to get a transaction to the table. I know what it took you to get that transaction to the table. What's happening here? Why are we, no. We're not going to let this deal die over $500, because guess what? We have to do this all over again.
Exactly.
Over the next 30 days. And so, how can we create a resolution? And sometimes it's the when they put their hands up, I get very confused on why the hands are put up, on the sense of, I had another seller. Keep in mind, I'm coming in at the end to save the day, and I saved the day, and I'm only 2 days past the contract date. And this seller was so mad that she went to a closing and had to leave and not close, that she was so mad that she needed time to think, right? And then her time to think was going to be 3 weeks, and this family needed a house. They already had the moving truck. I was off by 2 days. And you know what? Because of her time to think and not willing to work, she wanted more money from me. I actually was willing to give her a little bit more money, and then she was like, well, I need you to give me more money. I'm like, I'm the lender coming in just to help, I said, I don't have that money to give, ma'am. I just was here to offer to make it make sense over 2 days. And do you know what? That family said, well, rumor has it you can close a loan in 8 days. I said, yes, sir, I can. So no joke, they found another house, contracted, and closed before this other lady breathed through her mental state to move forward with this buyer. And what's crazy is they found a better house.
Good for them.
And talk about God, it puts you in the right place at the right time. It was a very emotional moment. You and I were talking about that earlier, but it was a very emotional moment for both parties. And what an outcome for that buyer, because they got a better house with less repairs, and a lower payment, et cetera. And we were like, well, look at you there, seller. You should be kind and not demand things. So we could keep going and going.
Mimi,
and going.
I'm looking forward to learning from you, by the way. I really am. I'm looking forward to learning from you, because your peace and your confidence, and you've got to, you're that proverbial duck on the water, just paddling like crazy, but nobody can tell. You've got to be, because you're a top producer and you're broker. You're a broker for hundreds of agents, and
thank you, Monte.
And you actually enjoy it.
I do actually enjoy it, because it helps me grow as a person, and I like to build things. So I think that's what we do every day.
You like to grow.
That's amazing. And just to make sure I put a disclaimer, the crazy of people doesn't mean that the agent's crazy too, because in that scenario, the listing agent tried to make it work, but her seller, was a little
sometimes the agent is crazy.
Sometimes, but I'm just, people that love me and know me and work with me on a regular basis, it's not always the agent that's the cray. Yeah, I'm just putting that disclaimer out there. But what a great group. Always good to have conversations with you guys. And I know we could keep the conversation going, but we've got some transactions to get closed here and some people to help, right? There you go.
Amen.
With the RG family. Wonderful. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. You've been listening to the talk of Music City Real Estate.